Morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to this webinar on how to ace GMAT Sentence Correction. In this webinar, we're going to talk about the meaning-based approach that Pyle at e-GMAT pioneered a few years back. When I say a few, it's actually we first launched this approach in 2010, and since then we've refined this approach 3 times. So pure focus on meaning and logic. We'll have some grammar in this webinar, but very little grammar. And what I'm going to demonstrate in this webinar is how if you focus first on meaning, the grammar piece actually becomes fairly easy. Now, one thing that really plays into understanding meaning is having a solid knowledge of modifiers. And to make sure that you have that solid knowledge, we did send a few modifier lessons, not all, but a few modifier lessons your way. The verb ing modifiers and verb ed phrases. And verb ed modifiers are 3 key lessons that you should have gone through prior to joining me in this webinar. If you've not gone through them, they are a part of your free trial. So when you go back, if you just log into your e-GMAT account, you should be able to watch these lessons as well. Now, we have some upcoming free sessions. We have a free session on number properties tomorrow, very similar to today's session. In tomorrow's session, we're going to outline how you can ace number properties questions using a unified approach. And we'll start with very basic questions, and then we'll go towards the most advanced questions. The common theme all across would be that the method to solve questions will not change. So that's tomorrow. And then next week, we have a free webinar on GMAT reading comprehension. In this webinar, we're going to demonstrate if you follow 3 reading strategies closely, how you can answer each and every reading comprehension question that the test will throw at you. We'll also demonstrate what does the GMAT actually test and why just blind reading won't help you get there, why many voracious readers are unable to excel in GMAT RC, whereas people who actually apply themselves end up doing a lot better. Again, that's next Saturday, a week from now, on the 9th of May. And then this Monday, we have a YouTube live session with Tuhina. So Tuhina she's an INSEAD MBA, and for those of you who know anything about INSEAD, it has probably the world's most rigorous application. So she's going to talk about a few things. First, she's going to talk about how she powered through the application process, how she portrayed various experiences she had prior to joining her MBA, and how that helped her portray herself as an ideal candidate. And then she's going to talk about how she prepared for the interview as well as LOR. And finally, as many of you may be interested, she's also going to talk about her B school experience in the light of COVID-19. So that's on Monday at 8 a.m. Pacific or 8:30 p.m. IST. With that, let me introduce myself and my team. My name is Rajat Sidana. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, one of the 3 co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm going to be a main host today. Supporting me in this webinar is Sandeep, who is a GMAT strategy expert who's helped upwards of 10,000 students ace the GMAT. Since this is a free webinar, I have about 340 odd students here in the webinar. We do ask a few leading questions, and one of them is when do you plan to take the test? As you guys can see that the biggest group over here is those who haven't taken a date as of yet. And the next big group is those who have upwards of a month and a half. And then we have very few folks over here, about 25% of folks who have their exam in the next 45 days. My guess really is a lot of this has to do with the fact that very few people are taking the exam right away, has to do with the fact that you guys are a bit afraid of the whiteboard. So let's just on the online GMAT. So let's just get a few more data points. So this is the question says how many of you have used the whiteboard? This is the whiteboard on the online GMAT. And then there are 2 choices. One says I have and I've used it on 10 plus questions. And the second choice says that I have, but I've used it on fewer than 10 questions. So the 10 plus includes 10 or more, and fewer than 10 means 0 or 1 to 9, not 0. And 0 is if you haven't used. Okay. The next piece over here that I'd like to to look at is how many of you have innovated with the whiteboard. So those of you who have used the whiteboard, and this is only the 30 or the 40 odd folks who say they've used the whiteboard over here, how many of you have innovated with the whiteboard? Which means that you've looked at how to optimize your experience on the whiteboard. So it's only for those 40 people who've said that they've used the whiteboard, not others. All right, let me end the poll and broadcast the results since I have upwards of 60 responses, but 8 if you've tried to innovate with the whiteboard. So very few people have innovated with the whiteboard. And the thing that I'm trying to portray over here is that that even though there's a widespread negative sentiment about the whiteboard out there, from what we've seen internally, if you innovate with a whiteboard, it really can be a huge boon on when it comes to acing GMAT verbal. And on the quant side, for 80% of the questions, it's not as bad. It's not an impediment. For the other 20%, if you innovate, you can find your way around it. And if you go to our YouTube channel, you're going to start seeing videos on how to use the whiteboard. And we're going to be posting about 12 odd videos with examples. Each of those videos has an example over the next few weeks or so, or the next 1 week, actually. I shouldn't say a few weeks. All right, with that, let's go right into the webinar pane and talk about GMAT Sentence Correction. There's one other question that I ask folks over here, which is, what's your target GMAT score? And let's get a response to that question. Okay, let's get a few more answers. The question is, what is your target GMAT score? About 237, 238, 242, about 250 responses so far. That's fairly representative. And what we see over here is that good chunk of you are aiming for that 730 to 750 bracket, 23% in the 710, 720, 15% and upwards of 770. That is great. So if you want to aim for 730 or higher, there's something that I want to make sure that you know, life is going to get difficult. Your mind will ask you to give up, and I want to just spend 2 minutes to explain to you why you should get to a score of 730 or higher. When you think about acing the GMAT and getting to that score of 730 or higher, the 3 reasons you should focus on that. One is, if you look at top B schools, and if you look at the trend over there, top B schools now ask for that score. The second is scholarships. I mean, scholarships have always been valuable. In this era of financial uncertainty, they actually become more valuable. Why? Less money out of pocket means that you're way more certain of that MBA education. And then the third piece is the difference in total earnings between someone who graduates from a tier 1 school versus someone who graduates from a tier 2 school. It's the highest that it has ever been. Okay. Essentially, those 3 points, the 700 to 730, could lead to a delta of close to $500,000 over a 10-year period. So let's just prove the first point with some data. So what you see in this table is the median scores at certain top B schools in 2014 versus 2018. Overwhelmingly, if you analyze this data, you're going to see an upward trend and trend moving towards that 730 score. In fact, if you actually look at it statistically, for 23 out of the top 25 schools, this score has increased. Okay. For folks at Yale and at MIT and Columbia, where they actually give us more stats, upwards of 80% of the class has a score of 700 or higher, which means what these guys are saying is, if you don't have a 700, don't even bother applying. And this is despite the fact that there were fewer test takers in 2018 than were in 2014. And again, there's been this upward trend all throughout, and even in the 26 to 50 schools ranked 25 to 60, you're going to see the trend. So the black dots are schools in that range. You can see the median score increase over there. Again, you can see the source of data over there as well. Now, this is statistical data. I'm going to share some anecdotal data with you. So these are all our former students. You can see their interviews on our YouTube channel. Nishant scored a 690, was rejected by every school. He applied to with a 740. He got full fellowship from Ohio Fisher and admit from Columbia. He's actually studying at Columbia right now. And schools categorically told him when he had a 690 that his GMAT score was bad. Pravi with a 680 applied to many schools, didn't get a single interview invite. Once she got a 740, received 7 interview invites five interview invites within 7 hours. And again, she got scholarships that you see over here. Krishnakant, a very strange story. 680 rejected by every school. This was round 2. So the rejection came in round 2. Improved his score to 720. Applied in round 3. Got scholarships from every school. And again, is studying at Georgia Tech. Bottom line is, when it comes to admissions to top schools, your GMAT score is way more important than it has ever been. And again, the second reason, scholarship, which I think in today's world is way more important than it was probably 5 months back, is another data point. So e-GMAT has got about $30+ million worth of scholarship every year. And so we have a significant amount of data when it comes to what causes or what leads to scholarships. And USB schools actually give out about $350 million worth of merit-based scholarships. And out of that, about 55% of that goes to students who get to that score of 740 or higher. Most of it, or pretty much all of it, goes to folks who get a score of 710 or higher. And what it really means is, if you apply properly, if you get a score of 740, you probably get at least a $40,000 scholarship. And what does scholarship depend on? It depends on 2 things. One is your GMAT score. The second is how well do you do during the interview, your likability during the interview. You don't apply for scholarships. Schools automatically award this scholarship to you. Okay. Again, some anecdotal data. Mamsi scored a 770, current student at Harvard, got about $90,000 worth of scholarship. Victor, 770 again, got a full ride from Ross and Keenan Flagler. These YouTube icons over here are links to their actual interview invites. Once you get the PDF, you can click on them. Kong Bui, scored a 760. Not only got a full ride, but he got paid to study at Ohio Fisher. So he got paid $1,700 every month to study over there. Talk about getting a salary to do an MBA. Again, we talked about Nishant, Pravi, and Krishnakant over here, and you can see the amounts. And there's some other examples as well. So Ayush, who's a former student, who's also hosting our YouTube Live, who's also the host of our YouTube Live series. He got a 710, applied to Ross Columbia, did really well in the interview, got waitlisted by them. He reached out to those schools, and then the schools told him, hey, your GMAT score isn't high enough. So within a month and about 4 days, he actually improved his GMAT score to 750. He didn't even have to apply. He just reported his improved GMAT score, and that wait list turned into an admit with scholarships. Okay. And again, you can see this quote by John Fuller's, the former admissions director at Ross. He says, if you have a 770, you'd get a scholarship, or you're likely to get a scholarship because the B school is trying to buy that 770. What is the impact of COVID-19 on scholarships? Actually, there are 2 things that I've really seen. So tier 1 schools, the impact is there is an impact, definitely. But the impact is way lower for tier 1 schools. Why? Because they have much bigger endowment funds than tier 2 schools overall. But we do anticipate the overall scholarship kitty to actually contract by about 15 to 20% for the next class, which again makes that GMAT score all that more valuable overall. One of the other things that I've seen with our current students would be joining in fall of this year is at top B schools are now providing loans in addition to providing scholarships. So, for example, we've had a couple of students who've gone to Kellogg, and those guys have been given loans at 4.5%. So if you're an international student, you get a loan at 4.5%. If you're a domestic student, for example, in the States, you get a loan at 1.5%. That's amazing. Okay, but let's look at the third reason over here. So the third reason is that the delta in starting salaries between tier one and tier two colleges is the highest that it has ever been. So what I'm going to compare are two schools, Babson and MIT. They're co-located in the sense that they have, they're 20 miles apart. So students who graduate from Babson and those who graduate from MIT actually have access to a similar set of opportunities. They're both in the New England area. They're both in Boston, actually. But when you look at their median salaries, what you find is that the median starting salary, when you take the bonus into account, the delta is about $60,000. Now, this delta wasn't always there. When I graduated, Babson's median starting salary was about 95K, MIT's was about 115, so the delta was about 20K. That delta has swelled to 40K, and similarly, the delta in the bonus has more than doubled over here. Okay. But if you look at this delta in compensation, you say it's going to be 45 because you don't get a bonus every year, and you really just do a linear calculation over a 10-year period. You're looking at about about close to $500,000 worth of delta. Okay, so yes, scoring that 730 is hard, but remember these three reasons, and then when your brain asks you to stop, just tell yourself that spending these 2 months preparing for the GMAT is going to be worth quite a bit in the long run for you. Okay. All right, with that, let's start with GMAT sentence correction. And what we're going to do in this webinar is we're going to solve a few questions. Solve this first question. This is from OG Advanced, so using the method that you typically do to solve a question. So here is the first question. I'm going to put in the poll over here. And the way we do in this is I don't like to time you, so I want you to select still solving. So I want at least 200 people to select still solving. So that way, when 80% of you choose an answer choice other than still solving, I know that as a group, you guys are mostly done, so I'd call time then. So that way, you as a group would time yourself rather than me timing you. And then at the bottom, I'm going to have this notes pod which says 0% done, and which means that everyone still has to do this. So can I get a few more people to say still solving, guys, so that we know? So I mean, I'd like to get a bit more representative sample of the class. 176, 181, 180, 199, 201. Perfect. So here is your first question. I'm going to mute myself during this time. Right, guys, pretty much 83% of you are done. So I'm going to call time now. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll, and I'm going to broadcast the results. So you can really see about 95% of you were done. We got about upwards of 300 responses to this question, about 351 responses to be very precise. So there's really good data over here. Now, I'm going to put in a short answer pod over here. And I want you to tell me, how did you solve this question? What thought process did you use to solve this question? Okay, idioms, parallelism, all right. Tense, okay. Well, these are error types. Again, what is the process that you used? What is the process? The process should say, I first did this, then I did this. All right, removing the fluff. Okay, there was very little fluff in this question, by the way. There's practically zero fluff for those of you who are really saying moving the fluff. Um, read the entire sentence, then skip the sentence in between commas to make more sense. Okay. All right, let's just see whether that makes sense. Guess and check what sounded reasonable. Okay, what was best suited. Okay, so here's what I tell you how people go about doing this. And I'm going to put in a yes no poll over here. So here is the sentence over here. So a lot of people, what they do is they really say, I'm going to scan the answer choices to find similarities and patterns. So that's the first step that they do over here. And they see, hey, in choices C, D, E, you have by, and A, B, there is no by. Then they really say, okay, they kind of decide which split is correct. So they say, okay, the by part is correct because they look at parallelism, and then hence they reject choices A and B, and then really say, hey, C, D, or E, one of them has to be correct. They look at C and they say, this is weird, so they reject choice C. Then they say, okay, E is better than by ending. So by the end of is better than by ending. So they say, okay, E seems to be better than choice D. So let's select E as the correct answer. Let me put in a yes no poll over here and figure out how many of you actually did that. Just put in, sorry about this, guys. How many of you did that? Type in yes if you did that. Type in no if you did not. Okay, you know what, guys? I have a much better poll over here. Let's do this. Let's get a statistical response over here. How many of you did this? A yes no poll. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. I'm going to broadcast the results. 52% of you did this, and 52% of you will have made a mistake. This is the absolute wrong way of solving any SC question. Why? Because if you're solving a SC question like this, what you're really saying is GMAT Sentence Correction is a test of grammar, which it isn't. Think about it this way. Why should an MBA be absolutely perfect at grammar? Is Satya Nadella perfect at grammar? Or is Larry Ellison perfect at grammar? No. GMAT Sentence Correction is a test of meaning and logic. Why? Because as a CEO, if you have to express yourself, you have to express yourself correctly. Not necessarily grammatically correctly or grammatically precise, but from a meaning standpoint, to be 100% precise. You shouldn't be ambiguous when it comes to meaning. So if you followed this process, you chose choice E, choice E is not the correct answer. And 42% of you made that mistake. Okay, so let's see what is the correct answer and what is it, how should you go about doing this? This is an official question. This is not an e-GMAT question. The official guide tags this question as a grammar-based question, yet you cannot solve this using pure grammar because there are 3 answer choices in this question that are absolutely correct from a grammatical standpoint, yet only one of them is correct from a meaning standpoint. But again, GMAT SC is not a test of pattern recognition. Computers do it way better than humans do when it comes to pattern recognition. I think we should know this by now. So let's solve this question using the meaning-based method, which is something which we pioneered in 2010. So what does this answer choice, what does the original question stem say that, or which we call as choice A say? It says the overall slackening of growth in productivity, okay? So is influence, or slackening is influence, is a subject verb pair over there, less by government regulations, okay, than, although that is significant for specific industries like mining, than by the coming to an end of a period of rapid growth in agricultural productivity. So when you think about this and you look at this sentence, you see this tabbed structure over here, that is really important. Why is that really important? Because it really shows how the various segments are related. Why? Because when you look at the word although, that it's referring to government regulation, so it's tabbed under government regulation. Okay, this word less is tabbed under influence, so that's where it refers to. Okay, uh, and so this tab structure is really important because this is what we call as a sentence structure. And if you're an e-GMAT student, if you've gone through the master comprehension course, this is what we teach over there. Okay, so essentially this sentence communicates 3 aspects of meaning. Aspect 1 is it explains the factors behind reduction of growth. Okay, it says there are 2 factors that impact the growth in productivity. Okay, uh, or impact the reduction in growth in productivity. One is government regulation. The second is that a period of rapid growth in agricultural productivity is coming to an end. And then aspect 3 says that there's a comparison, which means that it's impacted less by factor number 1, but more by factor number 2. Now, tell me one thing. When you read this sentence, let me just go over here, get in a poll. How many of you were able, which aspect were you unable to grasp? And this is a multiple response question, so you can choose multiple responses. Which aspect were you unable to grasp when you were solving this question yourself? Not when I'm outlining this out to you. When you were solving this question yourself, which aspect did you not take and note down? Okay, I have 180 people who've responded to this one. The question is, which aspect did you not note down? And here, this is a multiple response question. So you can choose multiple. If you missed aspect 1 or aspect 2 or aspect 3, you can really write that out. Okay, let me end the poll. I have about 223 responses overall, 223 people who have responded because I get the stats on the side. And what you really see is, 35% of you say that you pretty much figured everything out. 29% of you did not look at aspect 3, which is here the comparison piece. Aspect 2, that this period of rapid growth is coming to an end is something that you did not look at over here. And then aspect 2.1 and aspect 1, very few of you did not. Most of you got that essentially. Okay, so let's kind of move forward. All right. So when you look at the error, so we've done the meaning analysis. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do what we call as the error analysis. And when you do the error analysis, we've actually already done this one. What we find is we go through this list of errors: subject, verb, verbs, pronouns, modifiers, parallelism. And what we find is that there is a parallelism error over here. Why? Because there's a by missing over here. So then let's kind of look at the answer choice analysis. And the bottom, you see the original, at the top, you see the original sentence with the meaning analysis. At the bottom, you see the answer choices. So you reject answer choices A and B. Why? Because a parallelism issue, by is missing. Choice C adds the by and expresses the entire meaning correctly. Why? What does coming to an end means? It means that the agricultural productivity is the growth in productivity is still happening, but it's coming towards the end. Okay. Choice D, grammatically precise. There's nothing wrong in it, but it talks about the ending of that period. It's not coming to an end of that period of rapid growth. It's by ending of a period of rapid growth. So it changes the meaning and hence you reject that. Choice E, again, grammatically correct. It talks about a certain point in that period, not coming to the end, but a certain point in that period of agricultural productivity, and hence it changes the meaning. And uh, for the same reason, it is also wrong. Take a look at the slide. Choices C, D, and E are correct from a grammar standpoint. Yet, because choices D and E change the meaning, they are deemed incorrect. They are wrong, and for good reasons. Because if you wanted to communicate coming to an end and you communicate it by the end of, you're communicating something completely different. Daksh says, but I thought all answer choices are supposed to convey the same meaning. No, absolutely not. I mean, if that were the case, then there would be no misplaced modifiers, because that's what misplaced modifiers do, Daksh, right? What about gerunds are not appreciated? I don't know where you get all of this. Someone also says being is not appreciated on the GMAT, and trust me, when you really see this, you what you're going to really find is that is not the case. We actually wrote an article 6 years ago in which we proved that there are many correct answer choices that are being in them. Okay. Swati says, isn't coming a redundant word? No, it is not coming. Coming communicates a meaning. Okay. Coming communicates a meaning. Does end communicate the same meaning? What is the difference between coming to an end and the actual end? Okay. When you think about, let's think about a television series. Okay. Let's kind of look at a notes part over here. Hmm. Hmm. Mm. And I'm going to use comes to an end over here. Simple sentence, and got is Game of Thrones, by the way. What's the difference between these two sentences? What's the difference between these two sentences? What is the difference in meaning? Second is not more concise. No. Second one says at the point when God ends, XYZ will die. Okay. And this says when the series is coming to an end, maybe be in the last two episodes. Now, this is a very simple thing. Now, let's communicate something which is much more critical. And then let's look at this. If someone told you one from other, and what if someone told you this, what you're going to do is you're going to wait for the end, right? Okay, you're going to wait for the end. But over here, you're going to wait for the recession, the coming to the end of recession. You'll probably starts buying stocks sooner. Okay. Yes. Now imagine the difference in meaning. You are a stockbroker and you give this advice to your clients. One will help your clients make a ton of money. Two will actually make them lose the opportunity. Do you see the difference in meaning over here? This is really critical. GMAT SC is not about grammar. It is about meaning and using grammar as a tool to express precise meaning. And those other things, you say things have to be concise, they have to be elegant and all of that. No, meaning trumps all of those. And those who say that a point versus a range is you're perfect, Ashwin. That is really good. And that's what you need to learn. Okay. So this is a grammar related sentence. Okay. OG tags this as grammar. All right. And you can really see choices D and E, distort, aspect, to. All right. So when the test maker tests you, he's or she is testing you on, can you understand what intent do I need to communicate, and can you present it in the correct form? The correct form being the parallelism needs to be correct. Okay. And once the parallelism is corrected, you've got to make sure that that intent is correct. Okay. So the takeaway, make sure you understand the complete meaning of the sentence. Spend time on doing that. And if you're able to understand the intended meaning, you're going to find that answering difficult questions becomes a lot easier. Okay. Actually, you only 14% of you answered this particular question. 19% of you answered this particular question correctly. Now, if you want to stay updated with all things e-GMAT, connect with me on my LinkedIn. You can search for Rajat Sadana, or you can connect with the e-GMAT handle. We have about upwards of 500 free videos over there. We have probably the most precise implementation of the whiteboard, where you have the whiteboard truly floating the way it's on the online GMAT. And we are the only company that's practicing, that's posting videos on how to solve questions using whiteboard. So if you want to learn how to do that, you can also sign up for our YouTube channel. Okay, with that, let's go to the next question over here. Question 2. All right. So question 2, follow the same approach. Again, focus on still solving.
The year 2009.
Okay, I have enough folks. Let's get to, here is the question. Guys, last 5 seconds. 3, 2, and 1. Let's end the poll. I'm going to broadcast the results. What you see is that choice B is the most popular. It's 49% of you chose choice B. Choices C, D, and E are also reasonably popular over here. Okay, so let's see how we go about doing this. But before that, how many of you struggled struggled to understand the meaning of this particular sentence? Completely underlined. How many of you struggled with the meaning? Select yes if you struggled with the meaning. Select no otherwise. And I see some really nice messages on the Q&A pod where you're explaining to me why a certain answer choice is correct. That's really nice. When people talk about causality, it tells me that they're thinking, and when you think, you grow, and that's really important. Even when you make a mistake, as long as you're thinking, you're putting a stake in the ground, you're getting feedback that's personalized to you, which means that you likely will not make the same mistake again. So participation leads to growth, and this is a very low risk environment. As you can really see, precisely half the people, actually, we have a slight imbalance. Um, Almost half the folks had issues with meaning, the other half did not. And and then let's kind of look at this. When you think about this, all the answer choices were, uh, you know, uh, were very dissimilar. It was very difficult to figure out splits in this sentence. So when you see a completely underlined sentence, that's typically the case, and in that case, you have to resort to the meaning-based approach, even if you don't want to, despite all the data that we will provide in this webinar. So let's start solving this using e-GMAT's meaning-based approach. And again, focus on, on how we break down the original sentence. Okay. So the first word says because diegetic music. So there's a cause and effect. Whenever you see the word because, always make sure that you remember it represents causality. Also, when you see the word since, that also starts to represent causality. Okay, because diegetic music, and then uh, it goes on actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. And again, you see how we put rather than over here. Why? Because we are comparing actively referenced rather than confined to the background. And when you put this in tabs like this, you find that that it's a lot easier to understand as to what the intent of that fragment is. Okay, because diegetic music invoking a sense of verisimilitude. Now, verisimilitude. Now, you may not understand what verisimilitude is. You don't need to. Just call it VM. I think for those of you who are engineers, that's virtual machine over here. And what is VM? The idea that art can express a truthful version of reality. Now, you can see the subject verb prayer over here. Uh, Filmmakers creating period dramas use it often. Again, um, you look at the subject and verb pair uh, over here as well. Okay. Now, when you look at this, you see there are three aspects over here. Aspect one is a feature of diegetic music that is presented where it's actively referenced in the film. Let me just bring in the tick marks over here. It's actively referenced in the film rather than being confined to the background. Aspect two talks about the fact that in this diegetic music over here invokes a sense of verisimilitude or VM. And what is VM? It's the idea that art can express a truthful version of reality. And then aspect three says that filmmakers, because of this causality, because DM invokes a sense of verisimilitude, filmmakers who create period dramas use it often, use diegetic music often. Now, again, as we did with the prior question, we're going to find out how many of you actually understood all aspects of the of meaning over here, or which aspect of meaning did you not understand over here. Now remember, aspect one is a feature of this of DM where it's actively referenced in the film rather than being confined to the background. Aspect two is uh, is that DM invokes a sense of verisimilitude, and aspect three is the causality over here. So how many of you understood all aspects? If you understood all aspects, you should select none. If you did not understand either aspect one or two or one of the other ones, you should select the respective aspect over here. Let's Okay, we have 154 responses. This is a multiple response question, so you can choose multiple responses over here. If you, I have about 170 people who've responded to this one. Let's get to at least 200 responses. 180, 189, 191, 196, and about 201 over here. Let me end the poll. and broadcast the results. So we had about 210 people who responded to this question. Okay, so what's the cause? The cause is because DM invokes a sense of VSM. Filmmakers who create historical dramas use it often. So because aspect 2 over here, because aspect 2, aspect 3, because DM invokes that sense of VSM. Okay. Now, the key thing over here is if you don't get 100% clarity in meaning, spend more time to infer the logical meaning that you get from the sentence. Okay. Now let's look at answer choice analysis. All right, this is choice A. We're going to analyze choice A. We have the causality inferred. What's the error in choice A? What you find over here, remember we have the subject verb pairs. There is no verb for the subject diegetic music. Okay, and because of that subject verb error, choice A is incorrect. Now let's go to choice B. Choice B actually says actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. Okay, so this is a modifier that is modifying diegetic music, so this part is okay. Diegetic music is often used by filmmakers creating period dramas because it invokes a sense of causality. So, before it, because you have the causality over here, it invokes a sense of VSM. What is VSM? The idea that art expresses a truthful version of reality. So over here, the causality is there, the modifier placement is correct, which makes choice B your correct option. You can see it actually addresses each of the three aspects as well as the causality precisely. Okay, and hence choice B is your correct answer. Now, 49% of you chose choice B. Now we're going to look at choice C, which was very popular. Um, choice C says filmmakers creating period dramas often use diegetic music. Okay, what is diegetic music? Which invokes a sense of VSM. What is VS? So this is okay. The idea that art can express a truthful version of reality because it is actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. So why is choice C incorrect? Can you guys tell me? Let me just put in my short answer pod over here. Why is choice C incorrect? Yeah, the causality is flipped around. Yes. What it says is that because it's actively referenced in the film, it expresses a truthful version of reality. It flips there's no grammatical, there's nothing which is grammatically incorrect about this, but the causality is reversed. The meaning is totally changed as Lohit is saying over here, or as Naveen is saying, the causality is inferred, is reversed, I'm sorry. Okay. Nothing grammatically wrong, causality reverse, hence we reject choice C. Very good. I'm really glad you guys caught that. Okay. Now, if you'd not inferred that meaning, you would have selected choice C. Let's look at choice D. This is choice D. Again, I want to make sure you guys understand. You guys focus on this part over here. Filmmakers who create period dramas, often using diegetic music. Okay. Again, you can really see often using diegetic music. The verb is missing. Using is not a verb. Since it is music actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background, invoking a sense of VSM. What is VSM? The idea. So when you look at all of this, I'm going to go slightly quickly because very few of you chose this choice. The causality is absolutely missing, and the subject verb is gone as well. And the fact that DM invokes a sense of VSM is also off. Because of this, choice D is incorrect. Now look at choice E. Choice E was also very popular. Let me just bring in the poll over here. 17% of you, or about 50 of you, chose choice E. Choice E says diegetic music actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. So this part is okay, you know. Uh, this refers to diegetic music. Hold on. This part is okay. It invokes a sense of VSM. That's okay too. What is VSM? The idea that art can invoke a truthful, express a truthful version of reality. And when you use and, you actually kill the causality. Okay. And is not redundant. It is just saying two facts about diegetic music, which are not related to one another. It says diegetic music is X and Y. So when you do that, when you say diegetic music is X and Y, you actually kill the causality. But from a grammatical standpoint, nothing wrong in this sentence. Okay, because of this, choice E is actually incorrect over here. Okay, so again, uh, with that, I just want to make sure you understand uh, when you are solving difficult questions, focus on understanding the meaning. And if you understand the meaning, challenging questions would seem very easy. What you saw in this is if you focused on each and every aspect of the meaning, only one answer choice satisfied all the aspects. Every other answer choice was incorrect because of one solid reason or the other. Either it killed the causality or it did not have a corresponding verb with the subject. Now, some of you are saying, hey, do I have to worry about active versus passive voice? Do I have to worry about is the sentence most concise? Those are things that you rarely and I know some experts look at this and say X is more concise than Y. They're doing this uh, because they don't focus on the meaning aspect of it, and when people don't focus on it, that's how they justify. But if you focus on the meaning aspect, what you're going to find is that more and more questions, 99% of the questions can be solved using just the meaning aspect, along with the necessary grammar. What is the necessary grammar? Subject verb, modifiers, parallel list, the fact that the list should be logical, and so on and so forth over there. Now, let's go to the next question. Again, what you're going to find is meaning starts to become paramount as we go forward. And those of you who focus on meaning are going to be able to answer more and more questions correctly. Here's question 3. Again, you guys know the drill. You have to focus on still solving. So select still solving. I'm going to get about 150 of you to say still solving. All right, we have 165 people saying still solving. And here is your next question. Here is the next question. It's an official question. All right, guys. Uh, Most of you are done. Let's get those responses in. 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll and broadcast the results. This is a difficult question over there. Why was this difficult? Let's kind of look at this. But you can see this is what we call as a split theory. Many of you have there's no certain answer choice. In the prior question, at least 49% of you chose choice B. Not the same over here. We've choices D and E as they're very popular. And this is a difficult question. Each of the questions that we're going to discuss in this webinar, they're going to be 700 level questions. So why was this question difficult? Even though the sentence wasn't that long, despite being a completely underlined. Okay, grammar, verb, who's chiseled, great. I love how you're asking these questions. D and E were confusing. All right, that is good. And I'm also glad that you guys have identified verbs to be an issue. So again, I see that evolution happening as we are moving from uh, one question to the other. So this one is, so the prior two questions, it was relatively easy to understand the intended meaning and the logical meaning. And I mean, it was relatively easy to understand the intended meaning, A, and B, the meaning made logical sense. So that was there. Now we're graduating towards something which is um, a bit more novel, where the sentence seems easy, but when you think about the logical aspect of the meaning, it gets a bit more tricky. Again, this is an official question. It's not an e-GMAT question. We want to make sure that we prove this to you using official questions. When you go to the e-GMAT platform, you only see e-GMAT questions that test the same thing. So let's solve this question using the the e-GMAT three-step process. Okay, so let's start with this. Many of them chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. Let me get the right annotation. Chiseled from solid rock centuries ago, the mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia are dotted with hundreds of monasteries. So if you look at this, you say, hey, this one seems pretty good. The mountainous regions of solid rock are dotted with hundreds of monasteries. So when you think about the meaning aspect of this, and you first of all split it into the sentence structure form. Many of them chiseled from solid rocks centuries ago. And this structure refers to the mountainous regions over here. Um, okay. So there are essentially three aspects. Even though this is a fairly short sentence, there are three aspects of the meaning. One is, hey, there's mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia that are discussed. The second is, these regions were chiseled from solid rock centuries ago, if you were to really look at this part over here. And then these regions are marked with 100 of monasteries. Okay. Now, you look at this and you really say, hey, is it logical to say that mountainous regions were chiseled from solid rock centuries ago? And yes, we corrected chiseled over here, as you can see. There are two L's rather than a single L over here. But is it logical to really say that the mountainous regions were chiseled from solid rock? For those of you who say no, tell me why. Tell me why also. Just don't say no. Explain. No, but explain why mountainous. Forget about monasteries. Let's assume monasteries weren't there. Okay, let's assume monasteries were not there. Okay, well, some of you are saying mountains are not chiseled. No, that's not correct. Mountains are chiseled. Okay, chiseling is not an artificial process. I can tell you that. I've read enough about mountains being chiseled. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and here everything's chiseled. Okay, that's really important. Uh, The reason why this is incorrect is because, let me just focus on this. Let's get new notes over here. Let me just make this into, I won't call it many of them. Hold on. What's wrong with this sentence? Made from the made from thick crust pizza, the dough seemed puff. What's wrong with this? Yeah, pizza is made from dough. It has no sense in it. So in this along the same lines, are mountains chiseled from rocks, or are rocks a part of mountains? Okay. Rocks don't, a single rock doesn't make a mountain. A mountain has many rocks. That's the exact same piece over here. It doesn't make sense to build a mountain from a single solid rock. Okay. And that's really important to understand. So even though you got that there's something wrong, why is something wrong is really important to understand, because you're not going to get the same sentence on the test. And building that ability to understand while you're reading the sentence, building that ability to detect this distinction is critical over here. That's really, really important. Okay. So we've already addressed this. Logically, it should say that monasteries were chiseled from rocks. Okay, why? Because mountains can't be made from rocks. And that's really important. The takeaway over here is, before you even go to process of elimination, and this is in question number 257 in an advanced official guide, it's called a communication based question. A communication based question means that meaning is really, really solid. It's really critical to getting this. So before you look at answer choices, and before you actually end your investigation into the intended meaning, check, does this meaning make logical sense? And if it doesn't, then try and infer the logical meaning. Now, before you go to the answer choices, you might not get the exact meaning. But if you really say there's some, it seems that the intended meaning that the author is trying to say doesn't seem to be logically correct. If you go into the answer choices with that attitude, the moment you read one or two answer choices, you will get the correct meaning. And that having that attitude even before you read the other answer choices is really is absolutely critical. Now I'm going to inject the whiteboard over here once again. If you have the digital whiteboard, you can actually cover the answer choices and make sure that you do the intended meaning first before you look at the answer choices. And we've demonstrated that on our YouTube channel. Okay. Um, so what's wrong with choice A? Choice A kills your aspect 2, and the logical part is off as well. So there's a modifier error over here. Many of them chiseled from solid rock centuries ago should apply to monasteries, whereas it's applying to the mountainous regions, which logically is incorrect over here. Let's look at choice B over here. Look, this is choice B, just for your information. chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. Again, the mountainous regions. It maintains the same error, and hence we reject choice B for that reason um, over there. Okay. Uh, choice C. Choice C says hundreds of monasteries, many of them chiseled from solid rock 100 years ago, are dotting the mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia. So when you think about the original meaning piece, all the three aspects are correct, but this answer choice adds another problem to this. The word are dotting over here implies that the action is still happening, which means that these monasteries continue to dot, which means that going forward in the next few years, there probably will be more monasteries than were there than are there today. And that's not what the original sentence intends to communicate. Okay. The intended tense is a fact that this is what it is. And because of the R dotting piece, it changes the intended meaning and hence is incorrect. And when you think about this, you kind of go a bit more deep into verb tenses, essentially you'd realize tenses are a tool to communicate the intended meaning only. So all of this grammar starts to converge towards the intended meaning. Okay, let's look at choice D. Choice D says, again, very similar to choice C, it says the mountainous regions of northern Ethiopia are dotted with hundreds of monasteries, many of which are chiseled from solid rocks, are chiseled from solid rock centuries ago. Now, again, aspect 1 is correct, aspect 2 is correct, and aspect 3 is correct as well. The problem over here is are chiseled again shows what we call as present action, and then he says centuries ago. This just doesn't make sense to me. Okay, uh, and again it changes the meaning. The tense is off. Whereas what is the intended tense or the intended meaning is that they were chiseled centuries ago. So because of this part over here being incorrect, choice D is incorrect. Now, choice D, a lot of you chose choice D. I want to make sure you guys understand why choice D is incorrect. You guys get it? If it were, it would have been correct. Yes. Now, for those of you who chose choice D, do you get this? Choice E, which is my correct answer, it really says the mountainous regions in northern Ethiopia are dotted with hundreds of monasteries, many of them chiseled from solid rock. So it has the past tense, it has the factual piece to it, it has the stuff that the chiseling has already happened correctly, and hence is the correct answer. Paresh says, as many of which correct? Yes. Why would it not be incorrect? Why would it be incorrect? I'm sorry. Or many of them. Why? Many of them refers to monasteries. It's right next to monasteries. Why is that antecedent ambiguous? Okay. Okay, guys, if you want the questions to be answered, please don't post them in the queue in the short answer pod. That is there for your answers, not for your questions. If you post a question in the Q&A pod, uh, we can get an expert to answer your question. If you put it in the short answer pod, you will not get an expert to answer your question. Okay. Can I show choice D again? Yes, I can definitely show choice D again. Let me just go back. Here is choice D with everything. Uh, how can you do this in a minute and a half? Actually, you can do it in less than a minute. Most people, once they get accustomed to doing this, they do it in less than a minute. We have close to 1900 reviews in our review section. If you go to GMAT Club, share GMAT experience, you're going to find we have e-GMAT students have posted twice as many success stories as any other as students from any other prep company have. In fact, more success stories than students who use books, which by the way are available free of charge. Uh, we won't be GMAT Club's most successful company if this were not the case. And by the way, when we talk about a certain score improvement, we don't tout it over 5 reviews, we tout it over thousands of reviews. Okay. All right, so let me go forward. There was a question which there are other subject matter related questions which I'm sure Shraddha and Payal would answer. There was a question that says, what's the average score of your students? We don't track the average score as much as we track the average score improvement, which is what I take my job to be. The average score improvement is about 90 points for our students. What it means is that people who start at a 650, their average score is in the 730 to 750, 760 range. People who start at a 600, they improve actually a lot more to a 710, 720. Again, this is the average score improvement, not the minimum or the maximum. Okay, so and there are companies who tout a certain average score. The question that you should ask them is, how many data points are you considering over there? When you ask that question, that's when you'll get the actual truth. It's very easy for a company to say the average score improvement is 150 points, but you ask them how many students report the score, they'll tell you that about 40 students report the score. Is that even representative? I mean, Babson will tell you that 40 of the students are millionaires. Does it mean everyone who goes to Babson is a millionaire? Absolutely not. Okay, so so yeah, the median score improvement is about 90 points. If you start at a 550, of course, the score improvement is a lot more. If you start at 700, the score improvement won't be 150 points because that headroom doesn't exist. Okay. One of the other things that you should look at is the number of success stories that folks have on various places, their YouTube channel or anywhere else. Okay, and and this is something we only post a few of our success stories on our YouTube channel, and but if you go over here and compare this with what folks say with the number of success stories that any other prep company posts, you'd really see a huge difference over there. I'm not talking about a 20% difference. I'm talking about a 10x difference over there. Okay, let's go to the last question for the day. Okay, and before we go there, I want to make sure I'm not going to go through uh, the grammar based approach. I think we've done enough of it. But the key thing over here is that you need to have, when it comes to solving a question properly, you need to be very certain of what the author intends to say. Someone asked this question. They said, do we take the meaning as given in choice? Say you have to get to the logical meaning from choice. So the original choice will always convey what the author intends to say. Sometimes, as you saw in this particular sentence, you will need to infer the original the logical meaning, and so you don't take things on face value. But if you spend time on the original choice, and if you practice properly, if you follow a good structured process, you're going to be able to get to the intended meaning. Once you assimilate the meaning, then move on to the answer choice, and then you're going to find that you're going to solve way more questions correctly. Okay. And these are notes for you, which you will have. Now, the important thing over here is, if you want to get to that 90th percentile ability, because if you want to get to that score of 730 or higher, you need solutions that give you these insights. And that's where You can go blindly solve questions, you might not improve. In fact, many of you would have seen this, where if you go and blindly solve questions, you get stuck. You hit what we call as a score plateau. Am I correct? You start and blindly solve questions. You improve initially, but very soon you hit a wall and your score doesn't improve. And the reason is, as you solve questions, when you make mistakes, if you're unable to understand the reason why you made a mistake, you're not able to correct it. If you're unable to correct it, you continue to make the same mistakes. Okay. You need such detailed solutions to be able to understand uh, 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 why you made a mistake. Why? Because once you understand why you made a mistake, you don't make that mistakes. We as humans are wired to improve once we understand, once we get a clear idea on where to improve. That's something that we see with our students again and again and again. And which is why every solution, the level of detail that you see on our portal, has more detail than what you see in this platform over here. We actually tell you what is the intended meaning. We tell you the errors in the original sentence, and then we analyze each and every answer choice. And that's really important. It's really critical. A lot of people think, hey, making questions is difficult. Yes, making questions is difficult. Creating good solutions is even more difficult. And when you have a combination of lessons, applications, and really good practice questions with detailed solutions, that's what helps you get to that 90th percentile. With that, let's go to the last question for the day and understand how are we going to solve this. Let's focus on still solving. Let's select still solving. I get 150 people saying still solving. 115, 118, 121, 122. Let's get 150 people to say still solving. We have the last 20 minutes of this webinar. Let's get through that. 142, 143, 147, 149. Let's get one more person to say still solving. Perfect. Here is the last question. Good luck, guys. All right, guys, 80% of you are done. I'm going to give you another 15 seconds. Three, two, and one. Let me end the poll. I'm going to broadcast the results. Now, again, what you see is a split jury. Choice B is really popular. Choice C is very popular, and so is choice D. Now, it's an official question, a beautiful question. And for those of you who've studied all the errors, what you find is if you don't understand the meaning, you all the grammar knowledge that you have, you fail to apply it properly. Why? Because the incorrect choices over here are absolutely incorrect, even though they're grammatically correct construction. But once you think about the logical aspect of the meaning, you're going to find, hey, why the hell did I even worry about choosing this answer choice? So let's kind of go at this. So let's read the sentence slowly and understand. The sentence says a star will compress itself into a white dwarf, a neutron star, or a black hole after it passes through a red giant stage, depending on mass. This seems like a fairly simple sentence. I mean, a star will compress itself into A, B, or C after it passes through a red giant stage. Okay, and it seems fairly correct. There's nothing wrong with it. The only problem that we see over here is this thing which is dangling towards the end, this modifier, depending on mass. It logically should modify a star and not the red giant stage. And when you see depending on mass, next to red giant stage says, okay, that is incorrect grammatically. It is incorrect logically as well. Okay, so when you look at choice A, and very few of you chose choice A, which is good, which means that you guys identified this mistake in choice A. So which is great. You know, only 4% of you chose choice A, or 4.5%. So let's kind of look at the various answer choices, and we're going to do this slightly more in a compressed fashion. Now, choice B is really popular. Choice B uh, corrects some aspect of it. Choice B says, after passing through a red giant stage, depending on its mass, a star will compress itself into A, B, or C. Now, I'm going to focus on something over here. Let me just get an annotation. Whose mass are we talking about over here? Whose mass are we talking about in choice B? Red giant or stars? And you can really see the ambiguity start to come in over here. So it could be either. It could be either. Okay, depending on its mass, after passing through a red giant stage, depending on its mass, a star will compress itself into a white dwarf A, B, or C. So it could either be the red giant stage, it could either, also it could be uh, the star itself. Because there is no unique antecedent for, for its mass, choice B is incorrect. Even though, you know, when you read it, it seems perfectly okay. Okay, because of this ambiguity, choice C is incorrect. Red giant stage is not having any mass. Actually, a red giant stage has a mass if you study it, but that's not what you're not supposed to know that. But the red giant stage does have a mass. But the fact really is the ambiguity is is what makes choice B incorrect. Now, What's wrong with choice C? Choice C says, after passing through a red giant stage, a star's mass. Does a star's mass pass through the red giant stage? Does the star's mass pass through the red giant stage? No, a star passes through the red giant stage. And this is the classical modifier thing that you guys have learned all throughout. Yet 21% of you chose this. 51 students chose this. Okay. And again, if you focus on meaning, you get that. Okay. Choice D, which I think is a correct answer. Choice D says, mass determines whether a star, okay, mass determines, hold on, I pressed something in a wrong shortcut on my computer. So it says, choice D says, mass determines whether a star, okay, after passing, so after passing is very clear, it refers to the star over here. So it's very clear, it plays right next to it. Passing through the red giant stage, let's just put the arrow cleanly. After passing through the red giant stage, will compress, so will goes to the star as well, itself into A, B, or C. Whose mass? It's clear whether a star. Mass determines whether a star. Let's kind of look at a parallel sentence. Let's look at a parallel sentence. Okay. Let's just use this one over here. Liquidity determines. And again, it's not going to be as precise, but I'm going to try and explain. Company. What's bearing a recession here? And what does liquidity refer to? What does liquidity refer to in this case? What does liquidity refer to in this case? Very clear, it's companies. Yes. Liquidity refers to the company over here. Or you can say initial liquidity, if you want to really say, be very correct. Or cash at hand determines whether a company, after bearing a recession, after passing through a recession, let's call it that way. You can call it initial liquidity or liquidity of a company. Again, what you're trying to really be is super concise and super elegant. And I want to explain to you, this is not about elegance. It is about correctness. And there's a difference. I can change liquidity to really say cash at hand or cash in hand or cash on the balance sheet for those of you who are accountants. And what you see from all of this is, these are replaceable structures, and they can go from one context to the other and still hold true. Okay. Mass determines whether a star, after passing through the red giant stage, will compress itself into a white dwarf A, B, or C. And it corrects the errors from the original sentence and and still expresses the clear meaning which the original sentence wants to express, and hence is the correct answer. This one is the correct answer. Okay, I don't understand the tone of the author piece. Please explain how does it change the meaning that I want to communicate. Animesh, how does it change the meaning that I want to communicate? A star and a star's mass is not the same. Daksh, a star's mass is going through the red giant stage over here in choice C. Let me write this part over here. Let's make sure you understand that, Daksh. Is that clear? Daksh, if you say D is correct, then even C should be correct. IMO. Okay. A star's mass does not go through. Yeah. Well, a star's mass is different from the star. Yes. Good. Which is the same reason why choice E is incorrect. It says the mass of a star after passing through the red giant stage. The mass doesn't pass through the red giant stage. The star passes through the red giant stage, which makes choice E as incorrect as well. Why is choice C not correct? Who else says that? Ajish, can you please read the comment over here which says why a star's mass doesn't go through? Let me just take the same sentence which we did over here. If I were to create a version of choice C in the case of profitability, because for me, I think we as humans understand profit and loss uh, much more. Okay. I'm going to form the sentence using again. What's wrong with this sentence? What's wrong with this sentence? Choice C. You guys were worrying about choice C. This is choice C in the context of the company. What's wrong with this? Profits aren't going into the recession. Yes, that's wrong, which is the same way a mass doesn't go through the red giant stage, which is what choice C is doing. Okay. For those of you who are worrying about choice C, does this help? Yes, no? Okay. So, official questions, and what you really see is if you understand the intended meaning, you are able to get to the correct answer very quickly. If you consider B and D to have the same meaning, please put the question in the Q&A pod and watch this again. Express a sentence structure by yourself. Take some parallel sentences and you're going to find that is not the case. So with that, let's talk about where do you go from here right now. Okay, we are almost towards the end of the session. But one thing, hopefully, I've been able to convince many of you is that if you want to achieve that 90th percentile ability, You've got to focus on meaning. You can't take grammar to be, you can't take a grammar driven approach towards solving GMAT SC. You've got to take a meaning driven approach. All right. Um, and the way to figure out the meaning is if you pause at the sentence at various pieces, build the sentence structure, and look at the various aspects that the meaning communicates. Now, how many of you felt that once we wrote down aspects 1, 2, and 3, it was very easy to understand the intended meaning? How many of you felt that? You know, we solved every question, we wrote down aspect 1, 2, and 3. We just did that deliberately. It was easy to get to the right meaning, right? Many of you figured that. And again, if you're just doing sentence correction, this is going to be slightly challenging. That's where you need to go through some of the concepts that we have in the free trial. By the way, those are still not basic concepts. If you're an e-GMAT student, the concepts in the master comprehension course, the concepts which are in the onboarding that we have once you go through the SC course, they're really important. Okay. Again, if you're an e-GMAT student, and if you've not gone through the master comprehension course in the right manner, make sure you go through it. It lays the foundation for SC, CR, and RC. In fact, in many cases, for integrated reasoning as well as word problems in quant. Okay, but then let's talk about concepts. Okay, it's really important to make sure we talk about concepts over here. To achieve that 90th percentile, you need to learn and master upwards of 200 concepts. You need to apply these concepts, and then you need to make sure that you achieve that level of precision that puts you in that 90th percentile. Now, many of you are saying, how the hell are we talking about these 200 concepts? We only worry about subject, verb, verbs, modifiers, pronouns, parallelism, comparison, idioms, and some of you consider meaning to be a concept. Yes, those are what we call as major categories with the exclusion of meaning. But in each of these categories, you have the context of sentence structure. When you think about subject, verb, you can have a simple sentence with a subject and verb, or you could have a subject and verb separated by a modifier, or you could have compound sentences where you have multiple subjects and multiple verbs which are intertwined, which we saw in this case. Each one of that sentence structure in the context of subject verb starts to become a concept. Why? Because this is where you falter, right? I mean, most of you knew subject verb coming into this webinar, yet many of you faltered in when it was applied in the context of a certain sentence structure. And you've got to recognize that as a concept. You've got to get feedback on that. Okay. Then the next piece which is there is, what evidence do you have to make sure that you've mastered these 200 concepts? And that's really, really important over here. Why? Because you've got to make sure that you get these concepts over there in place. Just to tell you some things, what evidence do you have that that you mastered verb modifiers, whether they're verbs or modifiers? Do you understand the cases in which verb ing modifiers and noun plus noun modifiers can be used interchangeably? If I gave you a sentence with a verb ing modifier and I gave you another one with noun plus noun modifier, then gave you 6 or 7 such entities, can you tell me in which cases they communicate the same meaning and in which of the cases they do not? If I gave you a sentence with a verb ing modifier, can you convert it into a sentence that communicates the exact same meaning with a noun plus noun modifier? Okay. These are the kind of things that the test will test, that you'd be tested on. How is it that the verb ing modifier acts as an action modifier versus a noun modifier? Can you differentiate between them? Okay. So to learn these concepts, you do need to make sure that you need to learn each and every concept, then just learning isn't enough. You need to refine on these concepts and then excel. Okay. And to make sure that you do that, you need feedback over here. When you go through the e-GMAT course, you learn these concepts, you engage with upwards of 500 examples, and you get 100 feedback points. So when you're going through a certain concept file, you evaluate it right then and there. You know you've learned it well. When you go through a certain application file, you're evaluated right then and there, and you go feedback on this, on that. You compare this to, when you study using a book or study using any other online course, you get 8 to 10, at the most 10 points of feedback. That's 10 times as much feedback that we provide. If you excel at these assessments, you can be very certain that you can get to that 90th percentile ability. Let's talk about application. Most courses, most books will teach you, first teach you concepts and then teach you application. In the e-GMAT course, we teach you application as you learn concepts. So just to really tell you the difference over here, when you go through the SC course, in addition to learning these 100 odd concepts, you learn application 23 times. And the more difficult a certain concept segment becomes, the more application you learn within that segment itself. As you can see, the number of times, this kind of shows the frequency with which you learn application. So as you're learning concepts, you get feedback on concepts. As you're learning application, you get feedback on application. You get evaluated on both concepts and application. And as you do this, you can truly see your ability increase as you go through the course if that feedback's positive. Okay. Just to demonstrate how this feedback's given to you, let's take an example of a guy who hit 90th percentile in SC. Okay. And we're going to take an example of the simplest of modules over here, which is a subject verb module. This is a subject verb module in the paid course. What you see over here is that this guy scored 60% in the application file, and he scored 90% in the practice file. So we evaluated him while we were teaching him application. And the reason why he was able to do this is because if you look at the amount of time he spent on reviewing the application file, he made sure he took note of his errors, and he didn't make those errors again as he was evaluated right then and there. Now let's take a look at another file, verbs over here. Again, you can see difficult concepts, he took a lot longer to review them. He got really good scores. Verbs application, 80% is a really good score, spent a ton of time. Even though he made a few mistakes in the verbs practice quiz towards the end, what you'd really see is he focused on revising, and he marked these questions, the questions that on which he made mistakes, for review. And you can see these, one of them was a difficult question, the other one was a medium difficulty question. So you get those insights as to where you're making a mistake. You also figure out as you look at these solutions over here why you're making a mistake, and that's really important. Okay. And again, according to Sahil, he says, for me, the biggest thing regarding SC was the application of concepts. My concepts weren't bad in his first two attempts, but what he lacked when it comes to knowledge was the application of concepts. And because of which he faltered. As he fixed application, he actually improved in SC. Here's another example of a student who scored a 760. And he says when it came to the meaning-based approach, he's going to be joining Kellogg, by the way, this fall. He says there's absolutely no comparison to the meaning-based approach. He says prior to using the meaning-based approach, I was lost in 2 or 3 out of 5 answer choices. He says my brain would tell me this is right, that is right, this sounds right too. And this guy was stuck at 690, and he's someone who's gone through, he's an IDES officer in India currently. He's gone through and qualified through the IAS exam. He's also a doctor, by the way. So really smart guy. And you can see his medical background coming here. He says with With the meaning-based approach, my mind was at ease. I could see the core of the sentence, understand what the author wanted to say. I could see various appendages, here's the medical background come in, attached to the sentence. I was rejecting answer choices on solid grounds. And you can see from approximately a 65th percentile to a 96th percentile in GMAT verbal. Jin Yi, who scored a 770, again said something similar. He says, prior to this, is someone who's grown up in Canada, by the way. He says, prior to this, I was learning just grammar and hence was unable to solve 700 level questions. And then he goes on to really say, when you get to those 700 level questions, grammar is not going to be the deciding factor because two options would more or less be grammatically correct. The only way to get to the correct answer is if you focus on meaning. And that's really critical when you think about getting to that high GMAT score. Okay. Once again, if you want the scholarships, your GMAT score is really more important, has more anecdotal data that we talked about prior to this, as well as a bit more. So focus on the meaning-based approach to excel in GMAT SC to get to that 720 score or 730 or higher score. Again, to summarize, to get to that score, you need 98th percentile in SC. To get to that 98th percentile, you need that meaning-based approach. Okay, and just to get to that meaning-based approach, you need to learn concepts in the context of the sentence structures, and which is where those 7 to 8 concept types balloon to 200 concepts overall. To make sure that you excel, you need feedback, and this is how we provide feedback. And if you need help in creating a study plan, do let me know, and we'd be happy to do that. With that, I want to end this webinar, and I want to thank you guys for joining me today. If you could give me some feedback in the short answer pod over here, and if you have any other questions or if you need help, so yeah, let's get the feedback in the short answer pod. That'd be really good. And then I'm going to take on the questions that you have. But I think the thing that I want to make sure is a lot of you are looking at elegance when it comes to SC. Are you looking at concision before meaning, before the solid errors? Don't do that. Okay. Ambani says, so that's a good last name, says US News, 35th ranking university is ranked 75th in Financial Times. So which ranking should you consider? That's a really good question, and I can understand why that's the case. When it comes to rankings, I always would like people to look at how the rankings are built. And which is kind of the same way when I really said, someone would say we provide a 150 point score improvement. You've got to figure out what's the stat behind it. How many people are you considering? Okay, so if a school's ranked 35th, another school's ranked and the same school ranked 75th in FT versus 35th in Business Week or US News, then you have to really, the way I would look at it is to really say, first, why are you doing an MBA, and what's your core reason? The second is, how does that school essentially map out to those core reasons? I'll give you an example. When you think about entrepreneurship, and I did my MBA from Babson because it's the world's #1 school in entrepreneurship. For me, I never wanted to go into consulting, and for me, entrepreneurship was a big thing that attracted me to Babson, other than the fact that they gave me a full ride, and I was really happy going there. Why? Because frankly, every third guy who goes to Babson thinks of opening a business, and I came from a very conservative family, and for me, I needed an environment like that. I also had a full ride from a few other schools, and I visited those schools either directly or indirectly, and I love the culture at Babson, and I chose it. So for me, even though Babson was ranked, I think 40th at that point in time, I chose it over a Keenan Flagler, which I could go to, or a GSB Chicago, because of A, the scholarship, and B, the fact that entrepreneurship was bread and butter in Babson. If had I wanted to be a consultant or if I wanted to work at Microsoft, Babson's a really bad choice. Okay, if you want to be a consultant, go to Tuck, go to Ross. They have really strong consult. Tepper has a really strong consulting mindset. So in that case, the rank doesn't matter. So bottom line is, what's the outcome that you're looking for, and that's what should determine which school you want to go to. Now, for those of you who know Shavik from GMAT Club, um, how many of you actually know Shavik, who's a moderator on GMAT Club? Let's do a yes/no poll over here. How many of you know Shavik, who's a moderator? He's a moderator on GMAT Club. Okay, I expected more people to know him. I probably won't take that example again. So Shavik, long-time moderator, scored a 760. He actually got into Ross, and he wanted to get into MIT. So he asked me. MIT waitlisted him, and he asked me to provide a letter of recommendation as a third recommendation, which I provided, and he got into MIT as well. In the end, he chose Ross over MIT. Why? Because he realized he wanted to work in tech and preferably Amazon, and Amazon hired more people from Ross than it did from any other business school. And he's going to be graduating. Actually, he's graduating next week, and he'll be joining Amazon as a product manager. So again, it's the outcome that you get that you're seeking from that business school. In the same way, um, Arizona State University over here is not ranked as high, but if you were to get into supply chain, it's among the top 3 schools in the world when it comes to supply chain. Now, if you are someone who already has a work permit to work in the US, if you wanted to study supply chain, I think it's probably one of the best places to come to. But uh, if you need sponsorship, then it probably is not such a great place. Why? Because I don't think it's still a STEM MBA. So yeah. So again, look at what your goals are. So Mr. Ambani, does that help you answer the question? Don't go by the rankings, please. Um, GV Mahesh says, I have 12 plus years of experience in EPC companies for steel and power along with infrastructure projects. Now I'm to do my MBA from ISB, 1 year program. Is it okay or uh, will it help me back? So uh, Mahesh, again, I think it's really important for you to answer this question and not for me. I'll be very frank. Because if you're really saying, will you make more money post graduating? I don't know what the amount of money that you're making, and I no one can answer that question. I can frankly tell you why. Because people who graduate from ISB get a package, an average package of 26, but what they make after 5 years depends purely on how they perform. So I know people who within 5 years of graduating from ISB are currently earning about 70, 80 lakhs, and I know people who are still at that 25 lakh mark, and I know people who are actually writing a book and not making as much money. So it depends completely on you. Now, the question that you should ask or that you should answer is, why is it that you're doing an MBA? And most of you, if you have 10 plus years of experience and you're going for an MBA, you want to change. You're looking for either a career push or you're looking for a change in direction, both of which would make your life more fulfilling. Because if you have a good 10 plus years of experience, probably financially you're already set, and you should be already set. uh, uh, and so you're gonna make your goal is to make your life more fulfilling. You're and which I think an MBA will do. But that's a question that you have to answer yourself, and a lot would depend um, on where you want to go. Okay, what is the scope of GMAT in India? I can really share an article. Do B schools accept older candidates in their 30s? Absolutely, they do. I mean, they do. I mean, a few years ago, I visited uh, which one was it? UCLA Anderson, the oldest candidate who was there in their full-time class, a 2-year full-time MBA class, was 47 years old. Here's an example of a guy who got into Keenan Flagler at 38. Do we offer SC modules separately? We don't. They are a part of our verbal online course. What about people with 3 years of experience? That's good enough, frankly. If that experience is solid, that's fine. I mean, that's another misnomer. People really look at the number of years of experience, not the depth of experience. B schools care more about the depth of experience. Shinji says, I thought you were looking for an MBA to shoot up the ladder to the director level and a significant rise in salary. Is that not right? Shinji, no. For me, prior to my personal MBA, I'm a guy who likes to build things. I'm a technologist. I love technology when it solves problems. And which is where, if you look at e-GMAT, it's a 50% company. Everyone works full time and we focus on just the GMAT. When you compare us to any other prep company, Veritas Prep probably has 15 people who work full time over there, and they do not just the GMAT but also the GRE and also admission consulting and a bunch of other things. Okay, 50 people, each one of them does just the GMAT at e-GMAT, no admission consulting, and nothing else. We focus on building technology. We have 8 people who work full time on building technology. Uh, and for me, prior to joining my MBA, I was a researcher. I was doing things, I was actually building technologies in cell phones in the year 2002, 2003, which only started coming as features and products in 2014. And that frustrated me because it felt like I don't have control over my own destiny. So the reason I did an MBA was because I wanted to be in a position to make decisions to build products and, 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 and one day start my own business. Do you think you can get into a top rank B school with just 3 years of experience with a high GMAT score? Absolutely, you can. If that experience is solid and that GMAT score is high, yes. How about MS in supply chain management for getting scholarship? If that's what you want to do, yes. Yes, if that's a specialization you're interested in, then definitely do that. Best universities for global management. Two come to mind if I want to really just say global management. One is Harvard, the second is INSEAD. Both of them very, very similar focus, but very, very different applications. But again, any top B school will have a very good global management program. It'll make you a very uh, good, well-rounded leader. I wouldn't call the word manager because I think manager is often misunderstood, and as is and the purpose of an MBA is to make you into a leader, not a program manager or a project manager. Should we specific target B schools in the US if one has 7 to 9 years of experience or a 30 plus or if you're 30 plus year old? Um, yeah, why not? I mean, US B schools accept candidates. If you have a good enough reason for doing an MBA, you should. Uh, Ambani says if you want to change your industry, is there a particular school or method is to see, and considering that he has 14 plus years of experience. So again, that's a so here's something that I tell people with regards to how should they choose schools. One is you need to look at where do you want to work because most industries will recruit locally, barring certain top schools where you'd get, you know, every university coming in. And a case in point over there is Tuck, which is in the middle of nowhere, but it gets a lot of top companies to visit Tuck. But other than that, if you want to go tech, go to California, go to Boston, go to New York, or go to Washington State. Okay, don't go to Texas to that extent for tech, as you would see in these 4 locations. If you want to go into manufacturing or if you want to go into oil and gas, then Texas and Dallas are the best places. Just, Washington, Houston and Dallas are the best places around it. So if you want to go to a certain, if you want to do a certain thing post your MBA, location determines, the kind of companies that are headquartered over there, and hence that's how you should choose schools. Now, the age factor that you're talking about, every business school takes a certain number of older candidates. But if you're very particular about going into a school that takes candidates who are 31, 32, 33 years old, then, IMD Switzerland is one such school. INSEAD typically takes older candidates as well. So that's what you should consider. But that should not be, I mean, IMD is a very small school. INSEAD is not a huge school either. So that's another filter that you would say, but I'd go first by location. Um, if you want to, Binay says, how's SP Chan in India for an MBA? I want to join as project manager. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yes. I mean, look at the placements and see if the companies that you want to work for, do they recruit from there and how many people do they get? Um, Again, guys, you're asking questions about individual profiles. I'll tell you a general principle because I can't take each and every question, but as a general rule, um, you know, if you want a career change after 10 plus years of experience in the industry, um, so actually, let me take a couple of steps back. An MBA in Europe and in the US, and I'm going to really say categorically in Europe and in the US, is very different from the engineering degrees that you've had in various countries. Why? Because an MBA in these two countries teaches you how to hunt. It makes you become a hunter. Okay. Which is very different from when you think about an MBA in India or an engineering degree in India. And I see a lot of Indians here. That's why I'm going to take that specific case. Why? Because when you do an MBA in India or you do an engineering degree in India, you have companies coming on campus, you get placed on campus. You're not taught how to hunt, frankly. You are served your jobs on a platter, which for some of you is a comfortable thing, but in for most of you, it's actually I think you're being done a disservice. Why? Because if you study in the US or if you study in Europe, if you do your MBAs over there, once you learn how to hunt, and trust me, that phase is going to be a struggling phase. I went through that phase, it was a huge struggle. But once you learn how to hunt, you would never starve in any scenario. But if you never learn how to hunt, and if you're already 40 years old, the moment you get to the point where you need to hunt, you're going to find that that killer instinct is not here. Also, once you learn how to hunt, you're going to progress a lot faster in the corporate ladder. So I want to make sure you understand that distinction over there. Deep says, I'm 40 with 16 years of experience. What is the possibility of getting into a great school? So, Deep, watch the interview that I shared for on Keener Fagler, and you'd really see some some really good insights. And reach out to Poonam. She's worked with many candidates who are older. Neha says, I have been working in France. I'd like to get into either NCR or HEC Paris or IMD Switzerland. That's what I think you meant instead of IMP or MIT Sloan. What kind of comparison do I need to look for? So Neha, if you're into tech, MIT and supply chain, MIT is really great. General management, HEC and NCR are really really good, as well as IMD. But again, first let's get a good GMAT score, learn about the schools, and you're going to find as you learn about the schools, you're going to understand a certain culture. Um, how do we learn about the specialities of major universities in the US and from other countries, for example, Ross for tech? Kush, look at their centers of excellence. Speciality comes from centers of excellence. Speciality comes from the number of professors who are doing things, the number of research papers that they're publishing, and in a certain field. So yeah. George says, can you apply for Harvard, Stanford, or Wharton or the M7? Yes, it's up to you. No one's forcing you to apply to any other schools. What are the best STEM MBA programs? Let me just. We have a ton of articles on STEM MBAs. You start with this article, look at the linkages over there. MBA in strategy management. I mean, Harvard and Stanford are both very good in this, and INSEAD is really good. I mean, Tuck is really good. So for strategy, corporate strategy, I would look at schools that send people into consulting, and you're gonna find every top school kind of gonna fit the bill over there. Um, I mean, Vijay Govindarajan, when it comes to a certain aspect of corporate strategy, is legendary. Uh, the the late Clayton Christensen, who was and I love Clayton. I loved Clayton. I mean, he passed away 2 months back. Literally wrote the book on disruptive innovation. I pretty much read everything that he has written. Someone like Ram Charan is probably the world's best CEO coach with regards to, hey, how should you think about strategy? When he comes to India, the Ambanis and the Tatas come and listen to him, and so do the Narayan Murthis over there. Similarly, Michael Porter, Robert Norton, and Kaplan, those guys are really legendary. And look at what the professors are publishing. That will tell you the true speciality of a business school, not a ranking. How is Germany to pursue an MBA or specialize MS? So Germany, in general, it's I wouldn't say it's bad, but the MBA degree in Germany doesn't hold the same weight as it does in the UK or in the US. And again, that's how just the entire country is kind of oriented. I've worked in Germany for about 5 years. I lived there. I love Germany as a country. I still go there in the summer. But Germans, from a consideration standpoint, they're very practical oriented. They value your experience more than just a degree. Um, and I mean, barring the banking sector and over there. So over there, if you compare Germany to UK, I would consider the UK to be a better option. Okay. Specialized MS, a very different thing. Specialized MS is valued in Germany. The triple accreditation of Europe versus US. I mean, I would consider a US MBA way better than European MBA for a career transition because they're 2 year MBAs. I'm very biased personally towards it because in my opinion it gives you that time to make that career transition. Okay, by the way, I forgot to give you the session PDF. So let me share the presentation over here. Are 3 years OPT still available for international students? Yes, that's the STEM MBA. What are Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton MBAs most useful for? They'll give you the option to go to anywhere you want to, and that's what they're most useful for. With that, guys, I want to thank everyone for joining me. I know you have a lot of questions. You can write to me at rajat@e-gmat. I try my best to answer those questions. If not, I'll pass on those questions to some of my admission consultant friends or some of the current students. Um, with that, I also want to make sure that you register for the upcoming free sessions over here. Let me um, bring those free sessions in. As the upcoming sessions over here. We have this session on Monday, which is, how do you tackle an INSEAD application? This is by our current students. If you want to ask about INSEAD, the speciality that are the focus that the school has, this would be a great time to do so as well. And the session is hosted by a current student from Columbia Business School. So again, if you want to talk about Columbia, you can really do that as well. We also have a number properties webinar tomorrow. Again, very similar to today's webinar, but we'll start with easy questions and then move to the most challenging questions over there in this. So if number properties is something that you want to excel, this is a webinar for you. And then next week we have a free webinar on GMAT RC. Okay. With that, I want to thank you guys for joining me today. It was a pleasure having you over, and I look forward to seeing you on e-GMAT as well as seeing you in our future webinars. Thank you and have a great day.